Welcome back to the Young Shakespeare Podcast. Today I have the pleasure of being joined by Ncaa Palumbo. He is first team ISL. He is a U.S. Lacrosse All-America and a 4-star recruit that has committed to Princeton. Ncaa, thanks so much for joining me.
Yeah, of course, man. I'm excited to be on.
Absolutely. Why Princeton?
I feel like I get this question a lot, but ultimately I feel like my recruiting process kind of just came down to coaching, and I pretty much just made my decision based on what coaches I like the best, what coaches I think I'd want to be around for 4 years. You know, people who I think are great coaches and people who I think I'd look up to and want to be friends with. So, pretty much I realized that I like the Princeton coaches pretty much more than any of the other coaches I was talking to after the first time I talked to them. So I kind of felt like it was a good fit for me.
Yeah. What was the feedback you were getting along that process from Princeton? Were they clicking with you pretty quickly? Did it take a minute to get the offer? What was that like?
It was pretty quick. It was like it was probably within the span of like 2 weeks when I started talking to them. It was after an event that I first started talking to them, and then the next weekend I played pretty well at an event, and they loved it. So they kind of just like let me know what they wanted to do, and I was totally on board.
Yeah. What do you think for kids out there listening to this that are interested in going Division I or playing Ivy League lacrosse? What do you think coaches like that are looking for when they're at these tournaments? What do you think maybe you did to impress them?
Yeah. So obviously when you're in the recruiting circuit, a lot of it's like people are really focused on individual efforts and stuff, which it's super important, to be a good individual player. But there's also a sense of it like no coach wants a kid who can't play on the team. You know what I mean? Because ultimately there's, when we're running an offense, there's 6 guys. There's not one, and you're not beating a team, by one guy doing everything. So, I think a lot, at least in my experience, I feel like a lot of it is also how you're interacting with your teammates. Like if you like just pretty much just being a good teammate, really, and like supporting your teammates, lifting up your teammates and stuff like that. I think it's pretty. I think that's what a big thing that they look for.
Yeah, absolutely. I've heard that across different sports too. That's one thing. There was a basketball player who's getting some Division I offers. I was talking to off camera. He's saying a huge thing that his AAU coach has told us, hey, this guy, like, he loves to play basketball. He's a good teammate. And that's something that gets more and more rare. Like the higher of a recruit you get is to find that like humility. And so that's like,
you don't want to be a diva, right? I mean, a toxic locker room is pretty detrimental to a team, I feel like. So you kind of need good teammates.
Yeah, obviously you had some good leadership, taking Nobles as a captain to ISL championship. Describe that run to me? Take me from the first game.
Yeah.
What was the mindset going into the tournament?
So, well, I'll start you at the beginning of the season. So we had pretty high expectations for ourselves, but I think it wasn't until we had a few. This is also why I love the tournament. I know that we didn't used to do a tournament. I saw that there's a little room for error. Like we lost our first game of the season against Belmont Hill, and in past years that would have been the end of our season. So, it's pretty awesome. I love the tournament, but I think it took loss to Belmont Hill and a loss to Tabor to really like wake us up almost. Like this isn't being handed to us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there were a lot of talks in the locker room amongst the guys. Like the way we win this is we need every single person on the team to buy it. Whether you're a starter, whether you're, not playing as much. If every kid can buy into this and give it their all every day in practice, in games, in team lifts, everything like that, then we're going to really be able to put this together and we're going to be able to mesh and do something really special. So, by the time the tournament came around, I think the whole team was just feeling really good. We were like in a groove. Like we thought we were pretty invincible.
You had won it was like 8 out of the last 9 or something, right?
Yeah, we were we were on a long run. I think after the championship, I feel like we were on like 8 or 9 game run or something like that. Because we were just in our groove, playing our game. We felt great. So, you know, some of the matchups that we pulled St. George's first round, and we just played them. I think it was our second to last game of the season, so we were feeling great, and we rolled through them pretty easily. And then Thayer came around. We knew that was going to be a pretty much tougher one because they're like best coach teams in the league. Like they play pretty flawless lacrosse. So, yeah, I mean, once we got in our groove, I don't think anyone was stopping us. Honestly, we were confident, and we were just playing really good lacrosse at that point in the season. So
yeah, when you were at that point in the tournament, and by the way, I'm 100% with you. I think Flano or someone tweeted out, "There's no taking back the ISL tournament now. Like, much
100%.
better format. I love to see it. It's exciting." And in reference to that, at that point in the tournament, what were you thinking about the upsets on the other side that you were seeing? That must have been for someone that was familiar and had played those teams. Was that actually more expected to you, or is that still a kind of shocker?
That was pretty much, Governor snuck in with the 8 seed. We thought that they were, from before the tournament started, we thought that they were, if anyone was making an upset, it'd be them. Because, I mean, if you look at how they played throughout their season, they had really tight games with some of the best teams in the league. Mainly because of shout out Owen Umansky at the X, dude. That kid absolutely killed it this season. But you know, I think our team, we didn't win many faceoffs this season. We did. We had Braden Finney, who ended up getting hurt at the end of the season. He did a great job though. So like we learned how to make extra possessions for ourselves and play without, you know, a real faceoff guy that is winning, you know, consistently winning over 50% of the faceoffs. And I think that troubled, you know, teams like Belmont Hill and Sebs that they ran into.
Sebs just rided right out of the tournament.
100%. But we really wanted, our 2 losses were Tabor and Belmont Hill, so we were really hoping we'd get those 2. But honestly, we were pretty fortunate. We thought, you know, we got maybe an easier draw with the teams that we were playing, so we were pretty happy with that, you know. But we did want a little revenge because I think I do think at that point in the season, I don't think that we were losing to any team in the ISL.
Really? I think, that's the mentality you have to have too, right?
I mean, I feel like our locker room was just I've never been on a team with the culture that we had at the end of that season. It was pretty amazing. I think you know, all the kids on our team would say the same thing too. Like everyone was really into it, and everyone was just committed, not as playing their best lacrosse, but playing the best lacrosse as a team, which is what I think really helped us propel forward, was the concept of playing team first.
Absolutely. So as a leader and with that culture, what were you saying to the guys walking into that ISL championship game against Govs?
Yeah, so damn, I can remember all this stuff like it was yesterday, but I remember this throughout the whole playoffs. I just was reminding everyone we have every tool we need to win an ISL championship is in our locker room. We have every single thing we need. It's just a matter of it's pretty much just a choice we have to make at that point. Like, how bad do we want this? Can every kid on this team buy in and do their job? Because every single kid on a team has a job. Whether you're at the bottom of the depth chart or the top of the depth chart, everyone has a job they have to do to make the team better. And come playoffs, every single kid was doing their job. And that's really what made us the team we were by the end of the season. So, I mean, just a constant reminder, you know, kids thought like, you know, when Thayer beat Tabor and stuff, we were playing circuit competition, people were all hyped up. I'm like, you got to remind kids, like, this is really, like, this team beat the team that beat us. So this is like a really good team, even though they're a lower seed. You can't underestimate that. Same thing with Governors. You know, they beat the number 1 seed, and then the number, I think Sebs was a 5 seed. So, or 4 seed, 5 seed. So, reminding kids that, you know, playing an upset, playing like a lower seed, it really doesn't mean much because only 8 teams make the playoffs. All the teams are pretty awesome. But,
you don't want to be the headline of the Globe, to be the punchline to their Cinderella story. You don't want to be St. Pete's, St. Pete's beats so-and-so. You're like, oh, I don't want to be so-and-so. And I like how you touched on in that championship, like Owen Umansky and what he was going to be doing at Fogo, Harvard commit, absolute beast. I read your coach was saying how, coming into that game, a big part of it was that there might be a deficit in possessions, and making sure you get the ball back to the other side of the field. How did that play out? What was the game plan, and how did it play out within the actual game?
Well, we worked really hard pretty much all season, because we knew this was also like, people going into the season thought that our, weakest link was the face-off X. But we worked very hard to make extra possessions for ourselves, because we knew we weren't going to get as many possessions just through face-offs as other teams. So, I mean, we had a great rope unit with our Ben Clark, Roman Ticelli, and not Roman Ticelli, Colin Norton and Will Canavan. I mean, those kids, ton of caused turnovers, ton of ground balls. Those are three like all ISL honorable mention kids. Just because of the way they stepped up. Colin and Will, were hockey kids, but they really stepped up for the team. So I give a lot of credit to those three kids for helping us make up for the deficit at the X.
Absolutely. Helps to have a goalie too, like Tully.
Love Tully. It's nice to have 20 saves a game.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you can afford to make some mistakes. And does he have another year?
He does. He's going to his senior year now.
That's crazy. What's the message to the guys about next year? You think Nobles come back, run the gambit again?
100%. I mean, we've talked to a couple kids about this, the captains for next year and stuff. Like, the team culture through COVID was pretty bad, as it probably was for a lot of teams. But we were talking to the guys, we were like, we made an unbelievable culture on the squad this year. So it's up to you guys to keep this culture. Like, this is a championship winning locker room we have right now, a championship winning mentality, and we don't want it to end. I'm like a graduate now, but I'm still Nobles, man. I'm still a Nobles fan. So
right.
We're like, we want to make sure that they don't let that go, and that they instill that in the team this year, and that they make sure that is instilled in the younger kids for years to come.
Yeah, absolutely. You're handing someone the keys to a Lamborghini, telling them, here you go, but don't crash it.
Yeah, right.
One thing that I think is a huge factor, and a source of probably, if I had to speculate, building that culture was kind of the leadership you showed coming into the season, coming off of being sick. And do you think that was kind of a part of, getting the guys closer together, kind of rallying behind you?
I mean, I hope so. I tried pretty hard to lead by example. I never missed a practice the whole season, which I'm pretty proud of, considering, I finished chemo, I think 2 weeks before we first started. So I was in pretty tough shape in the beginning of, our training and everything like that, tryouts and stuff like that. But I like to think that me just being out there giving my full effort, even though, obviously visibly it wasn't as, I couldn't do quite as much as everyone else. I hope that I led by example. Kids looking at me and saying like, yeah, I can do this 100%, and me getting better and better throughout the season. I was a completely different player at the end of the season than I was at the beginning of the season. And I hope that inspired kids too. You know what I mean? But
yeah, I think playing and working out through that time is insane and insanely inspirable. What kind of gave you the courage to get through that? Were there people around you? Was it looking towards your future? What were the things on your mind that helped you power through?
Yeah. So wow, there's a lot to this, but
Yeah.
I obviously had a great support group around me. You know, a lot of people that I love and love me. But ultimately, when I feel like when you're faced with hardship like that, it's up to you, right? It's all, you know, you can have as much support as you can get, which I did. But ultimately, it's a decision you're making, right? So pretty much, I was pretty much just like every day I was having hard chemo or whatever. Um, I was thinking a lot about about you know, I don't know, you're pretty grateful for, you take things for granted, right? Like I always took for granted playing lacrosse, even just going to school. I couldn't go to school that much. So when that gets taken away from you, it's like I really wanted it back, all of it. So I was pretty motivated, you know, no matter how bad I was feeling, just to go in the gym and do something, you know, even if I was just going to play wall ball, shoot around. I was pretty motivated to continue to get better because I didn't want I didn't want to lose everything that I've gained throughout, you know, my however long it's been for me playing lacrosse.
Yeah.
Um, you know, my doctors and stuff are telling me I'm unlucky if I you know, lose only a few pounds of muscle, but I ended up gaining like, I think it was 8 or 9 pounds of muscle throughout
Wow.
those chemo. And I was super proud of that, just because,
Yeah.
you know, they pretty much told me that I wouldn't be able to gain any muscle at all. And I'd be lucky to retain most of it.
Mm.
But that was I really, every day I was motivated by thinking about playing lacrosse and thinking about how I want my future to be. You know, this is my story. How do I want to write it? Right. So it's up to me. I think everything a man does is his decision to do, pretty much. So I was like, is my decision going to be to milk this thing, to sit, to like kind of rest a lot,
Mm-hmm.
which I wanted to do, which my body wanted to do. But, you know, I made a conscious decision that I wanted to continue to get better. So
Yeah.
pretty
Yeah.
much what was going through my head.
That's just so, incredibly admirable. Like being
Thank
in that place and deciding. And the thing is, no one, like you said, you could have just rested. I don't think anyone would have blamed you. And, no blaming anyone that would make that decision. And probably knowing in your head, hey, the doctors are telling me this is the science of what usually happens. But have they seen someone like Chad Palumbo? And like you said, what kind of man are you made of? And I think that they probably don't see a lot of people like you that are just so locked in and determined. And that's
you.
just, yeah, it's fucking awesome. What
Thanks,
did
man.
the actual sensation feel like of that hard chemo? I think like a lot of people, I'm kind of lost on that. Fortunately, I don't have any experiences. What is going on with hard chemo?
So pretty much it depends a lot on the weeks, because, you know, I'm going through cycles and I'm taking different drugs, different chemo drugs based on the week. So every week was a little different, but some weeks, you know, I was pretty much in bed for like 3 or 4 days, no matter how motivated I was.
Oh,
Um, but I was, you know, even when I was in bed, it just feels good to get up and move around. So, you know, I would try to get up every day and go play wall ball or something, just to get the blood moving a little bit.
yeah,
Um, I mean, fucking sucks, really. I mean,
yeah,
there's not another real way to put it. But
yeah,
really, what got me through it, I'm big into self accountability. So I mean, I knew no one was gonna hold me accountable. This is like what we're talking about. No one was gonna hold me accountable for going to the gym every day, playing lacrosse every day,
yeah.
because they were like, yeah, you can. This is your time to rest. But I mean, I'm like, I know what I'm capable of. You know what I mean? In my head, I know I can do this. I know I'm capable of doing more. So just pushing myself, really. But there's a lot of there's a lot of side effects to chemo that just like really hold you back. I was dealt a lot with neuropathy problems, which was pretty much my hands were getting numb, which made it tough to play lacrosse. But
yeah.
And then towards the end of it, it switched to my feet, and I couldn't really run at all.
Oh,
so
boy.
it was interesting for sure. Sometimes it's tough to eat just from the nausea. So, but it's like, I know what I'm capable of in my head. So if no one else is going to hold me accountable, I'm going to hold myself accountable.
Yeah. And like you said, you couldn't go to school. There'd be those stretches where you're away from people, you're in bed. Is there a loneliness to that? Is there a time when if you, like you said, no matter how much support, no matter how good people are to you, if you're kind of sitting there and have too much time to think, was there ever, hard bouts like that? Or were you able to kind of power through the whole time?
No, there were definitely some tough moments, no one's coming and, laying in bed with me all day when I'm not feeling great. So, there's a lot of self-reflection. I thought a lot about, lacrosse, honestly. Like,
Yeah.
I thought a lot about, I didn't know if I was going to be able to play my senior season, but I thought a lot about, like, once I figured out this wasn't going to be something that was going to be too bad. Pretty much, once I found out I was going to survive this, my next thought was, like, I want to be with my friends. I want to be playing lacrosse. So I thought a lot about winning an ISL championship when I was just kind of envisioning what it would be like, with playoffs and everything, and how making a run would be and everything. So, and that's that's a big thing that motivated me too after, losing a few games in the beginning of our season, because I was like, I'm not letting the season get away from us. This season will not get away from us. So
yeah, absolutely. Coming out of that and, or even during it, right, the process and coming out of cancer, did you notice people were treating you differently? Like, were there any times when you had to step up and be like, you're in practice and your boy doesn't want to play you as intensely or something, you have to just, pop him across the face and say, hey, I'm back, don't treat me like that?
yeah, I mean, maybe not quite like that, but
yeah.
but there are moments when, so pretty much we did a lot of like offense defense competitions in practice, and like loser would have to do like 10 push-ups or something like that. And there was a lot of like kids complaining about that. It was like, wow, like, shut up, do the push-ups, let's get back, let's do another rep.
Mm-hmm.
Don't realize how thankful you are for this, for moments like these, just for being able to be out and practicing until it gets taken away from you.
Mm-hmm.
And I promise you, if it gets taken away from you, you're gonna miss doing those push-ups. You're gonna miss running that sprint. So
yeah. Final kind of question on this before we move on. What do you think you'll take away from having cancer? Like, the rest of your life, what do you think you'll take away and learn from it?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, I pray I don't have to deal with that ever again. But I don't want to say I'm grateful for having cancer, but I want to say I'm really grateful for what it's done for me, because it's changed my life, and it's one of the, I think a better man is made from hardship. So it's something that's completely changed my life, for the better. And I'm honestly, I think it's almost a blessing in disguise. It's just kind of changed my mindset in ways that I don't think it could have been changed otherwise. And I'm at this point in my life, I've never been more motivated, never been more determined to, chase my goals. So I honestly do think it's a blessing. It was a blessing in disguise for me.
Wow. Yeah. Well, thanks so much for sharing that story. And I think a lot of people at home listening, and a lot of people in the lacrosse community for months have just been inspired by you. And it's just crazy that you came back and you played and you led the team. It's a little bit like a Disney movie almost, but I don't think they could write it that well.
Yeah, I've heard that a few times as well.
Really? Yeah. Yeah. That's wild. So coming out off of the season, what was the, being committed were you taking on less tournaments or less club games? How does that work? Because I'm kind of unfamiliar with the process once you commit. Is it the same kind of summer lacrosse workload?
Yeah. So going into your senior year, if you're committed, like I committed my junior fall, and then going into your senior year, it's a lot of the same stuff. You know, I'm playing 3 or 4 tournaments a summer. I'm not playing like in showcases though. You know what I mean? After you graduate, there's really not much. Like there's a few things you can go to. I know some people go to like kind of like a men's league tournament in Lake Placid, and the one I went to was in Vail. But there's not too much for people after they graduate high school to do really in terms of club. A lot of people just playing men's leagues and stuff weekly.
Yeah. Is there something that at this point you're looking towards with Princeton? Like, hey, by time lacrosse starts in September, I'd like to, get my cardio up or get my strength up or add this move to my, what would you say, to the gauntlet, right? So I don't know. Yeah. Is there something you're looking forward to? Like, hey, this is the goal. This is my motivation before I get on that field with my new teammates.
100%. I think the past, like I think I'm a completely different player than I was 2 years ago, and I'm a completely different player than I was last year. So I think the off season, I'm just constantly trying to work on, the things that I think I need to work on. So I think the biggest weakness in my game right now, in a large part because of the chemo, is my just physical, my strength, my quickness, my stamina is a huge one because chemo has that up. So yeah, that's why that's part of the reason I'm working on my gym, just so I can be in there more and just trying to get better really.
Yeah.
And then some other things I'm working on. I'm still working on, like, I feel like I work on my shooting a lot recently because I think it could get a lot better really. Yeah, those are pretty much the two things I'm focusing on in terms of my game right now.
One of the things I wonder is when you guys are you traveled to Colorado, you got some other games coming up soon. How do you make these improvements? Obviously the in-game stuff is there. You're getting plenty of reps, but when you're traveling all summer, how do you get that time in the weight room? How do you work on that extra shot? Is it you just have to find the time in the hotel room? Like, how do you even do that?
Yeah, so it's a lot harder, when you're still doing club stuff constantly. Like last summer when I was doing, 3 or 4 tournaments, that really weren't gonna affect me too much because I was already committed. You really just have to find time. I mean, most tournaments are on the weekends, so you can't really take many days off because during the week that's your time really. But I do, like, I love to get to the field really early for a game so I can just get the feel for all those things. Like, if I haven't been shooting on the run really well, I'm gonna, get to the field like an hour and a half early and just, shoot on the run for a little bit, before I start playing. So
Yeah. It's kind of like that Kobe Bryant mentality, like show up early, get the reps and stuff like that. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Yeah, as I say, is there a person, whether it's lacrosse or otherwise, that you kind of look to for that mindset, or like that growing up, you're like, oh shit, look at how the way this guy works, whether it was a older guy at Nobles or like just a, professional athlete?
So, I feel like I've got a lot of different, people I look up to, but in terms of mentality and work ethic, it honestly, you kind of hit the nail on the head, Kobe, to be honest.
Yeah.
Listen to him speak, it's pretty awesome because it kind of opened up once I started like listening to, his, like, him speaking about that kind of stuff and mindset. It's kind of opened up almost like a new facet of life.
Mm-hmm.
Because like you don't really realize how much time you actually have until you utilize it. So, if you're like practice at noon, you'd be shocked how much time you can have in the morning if you wake up at 8 a.m. and you practice for 2 hours. You know what I mean? Before you go. So it kind of opened my eyes to how much free time you actually have. You know what I mean? So I do have a lot more time on my hands than I would have realized otherwise. And utilizing that time is crucial to, being a really good player in any sport.
Yeah. Person I look to is like Joe Rogan. I've got to be big shocker there. Got to be, the Joe Rogan of like Eastern Massachusetts high school basketball, Yeah. No one's going to do it. No one's going to do it like me with Tri-Valley League, small high school content,
Yeah.
There's no competition, but if there was, I'd get them. So no, but yeah, I feel that. I think everyone has to have a craft or a passion. My aspirations are bigger than just like the high school sports content. And I think that's, everyone starts in a place. And sometimes I wonder, like, I got friends at college and they don't play a sport or they don't have a thing. I'm like, what's the big focus, right? It's so key to have something, because that's what generally gives life meaning, is you orient yourself towards something that is better, that could make your life better or make you a better person.
100%. I was also, this like reminds me of like something like, I think it was Matthew McConaughey who said it, but it was like, my hero's me in like a year or something like that. My hero's me in 5 years, whatever it may be. But it makes sense to me a lot, because I'm like, if I really don't feel like working out, or I really don't feel like shooting around and like doing drills and stuff, I think like, well, if I let this slide and I don't do it, what am I going to be like in a year from now? You know what I mean? Versus if I can rep this out every single day, if I can do this when I'm supposed to be doing it, and not giving myself any free days, like, what am I going to look like in a year? You know what I mean? Kind of chase that perfect self that doesn't really exist, but that's what you're chasing, really.
Yeah, it's a thing. Yeah, if I skip today, or let's say I heard this one thing, where it was this pro track athlete, and she was a heptathlete, and she was saying, would sometime in high school or college, her goal was to get better abdominal strength to help her with the events she was doing. And she started on this 6-month plan. She got like 2 weeks in and quit. And like at the end of when it would have been 6 months, she found her plan like on a piece of paper in her house. And she was like, oh my God, if I stuck with it, I'd already be here. I'd be 6 months down the road. What would I look like? And then she's like, okay, well, I might as well just start again now, because in another 6 months, I'll say, well, if I'd been doing it for a year, this is where I'd be at. And that's the common quote, like, regret is the biggest pain.
100%. Yeah.
Oh, I don't know if I totally agree with this, but I think there's something to think about it. What did I hear? This was what was the quote? Like, a man really finds himself in hell when he realized what he could have been.
Yeah, 100%. Like, you just, because a year from now, or even like right now, if I didn't, this was also something that pushed me through chemo to go back to this, but like, I'm like, if I just like take these 6 months off, I'm really gonna regret this. You know what I mean? If I don't push myself as hard as I can right now, I'm just gonna regret this, because I'm not gonna be in a place where I want to be, 6 months, a year from now.
Yeah. And what is the trajectory for you? What is, obviously the motivation is become the best lacrosse player possible. Is that your singular focus, or do you have other peripheral things like, hey, when I get to Princeton, I want to have such and such grades, or I want to set myself on the track to get such and such job? Are there other things that are kind of in your head as like goals you're looking towards?
I mean, like, big picture, it's I think right now I'm incredibly focused with lacrosse, and just becoming a better player, because I think that doing so is building discipline for myself, is like building the self accountability and discipline I need to, because to be honest, I don't really know what I want to do. at Princeton, what I want to study or anything like that. So I think right now is a big, the past year I'm building a lot of self-discipline so that I can succeed at pretty much whatever path I go down.
Yeah. And you don't have to know. That's a huge thing I'm just slightly older. I'm just finished my junior year of college, but I have myself have experienced throughout this last few years since graduation. And a lot of my friends have said, hey, I want to do this. I want to be in investment banking. And then they figure, oh no, I actually want to be in this. They get into different things. So you never kind of know where you're going to be headed. And so it's good to keep open to a bunch of paths. And it's also nice that you are locked in on a target, on a goal. And that's essentially where you need to be, because you're stepping into a program, which, by the way, I'm sure was so exciting to watch, but a program that made it all the way to the semifinals of the NCAA tournament.
It's super exciting to watch, dude. I'm really excited to be a part of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's weird. It's almost like those guys are gonna, I've a lot of D1 athletes that I've talked to have had this experience where you step into it and you fight to belong, and you belong, and the coach has picked you, but it's still intimidating. You're like, that's the guy from the TV. That's the kid who did this or that. And you have to earn your stripes. Like what's your mentality going to be coming in when you try to, fit in with the team or try to make yourself embrace the process?
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely, like you were saying, these are people I've been, watching on. I mean, I've met a bunch of them, but, a lot of these kids I've been watching on TV for the past year or two. So, I guess my motivation pretty much in that regard is like, I want to be the kid on TV that people are watching. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I mean, I just hope I can fit into the team well and, mesh with a lot of the players.
Yeah.
These are a lot of kids who I've looked up to. So I'm pretty excited. So I'm hoping for the best.
I was watching a lot of film from you preparing for this, going through different highlights. And one thing that I just can't quite put my finger on it. And I was watching with two people that actually know a lot about lacrosse and play. I just can't put my finger on it, but you're kind of just like a wizard with the stick. Like, you were doing things that were so creative and so like, it was like so natural. A lot of these, like behind the back, behind the neck, all this stuff. Yeah. The one where you do plays that are so extraordinary that they have to be slowed down for people to actually see what happened. Like when you were against the kid from, I can't remember where, it was like you faked under the legs and then threw it back over. I was like, what did he just do? Like, what is that? How did you develop this style? Was it always like that, or did you work on some of these moves?
Yeah. So pretty much I like to talk a lot about, I think, like you're talking about role models. I think the Thompson brothers kind of completely changed how I played my game, because I was a good lacrosse player when I was little. Before middle school and stuff, I was playing a lot, listening to what my coaches tell me and everything. And then they got me kind of into college lacrosse, and I started watching them, and I'm like, man, I want to dodge like Lyle. I want to throw the behind the back like Miles. You know what I mean? And that kind of opened up my eyes to a new part of the game and creativity, where I can pretty much score at any angle. You know what I mean? How is someone going to defend me if I can, score at any angle, really? So you can be playing perfect defense, but it's virtually impossible to stop someone from shooting a behind the back shot because you're protecting your stick. So a lot of it stems from that. And then I think a lost art in sports in general is just, I think about this a lot with hockey, because I feel like hockey players all the time are going to practice and grinding on, skating and puck skills. But I think there's a lost art in just messing around with the stick, with the lacrosse hockey stick or something like that. You know what I mean? That's why like a lot of the best basketball players come from they play pickup basketball all the time. Mm-hmm. It's sort of like a low stakes environment where you can try a lot of things, versus like if you're not doing that, if you're not, I'm in my backyard throwing crazy random stuff that I'm trying to do just for fun, which is pretty much how I've, made the repertoire that I have right now. But like, if you're not doing that, you're just going to practice where the environment isn't, if you throw a BTB or something like that, something creative, and you miss by a mile, the environment is a lot harsher than if you're trying to kind of learn how to do that. I think you really need to be just kind of messing around on your own.
Yeah. That is, I think, very intelligent, and that makes a lot of sense. I like the analogy too of the pickup basketball. Like if you're just in the gym working with if Kyrie was just like,
100%.
let me just listen, obviously, like you said, you listen to the coaches, but then if he just stayed to the basis of, let me work on my bounce pass, let me work on my, this or that. A guy like Kyrie Irving wouldn't have those crazy moves that, because if you're at the pickup game where no one's seeing it, it's not a thing, then you're getting a move that no one's ever seen when you bring it into the game. I think that's crazy and did you ever encounter moments of friction, like you said, when you're working on a new move and it's in the process of becoming something that's going to be pretty, like you said, even good defense would make, you can't stop something like that, where people like, hey, you did just miss that BTB shot. Hey, you just missed that pass. What are you doing?
You can't have success without failure. So I've had a fair share of moments, especially, back in middle school, or even early years of high school, where, you think you have something down and you try a new thing in a practice or even in like a game or a scrimmage or something, and the coach, pulls you to the bench. They're like, what are you doing right now? You know what I mean? Ultimately, I think you got to look past that. That's like, also, this goes back to what I was talking about, why I'm going to Princeton, because I want to play for coaches. Like, he's all for creativity when it's the right time to do so. So that's a big thing I wanted with my college coaches too, is I wanted freedom to play my game, to play the game how I want to play the game. You know what I mean? So within the offense you're running, I think, if I were a coach, I think players should have the freedom to do what they need to do to score a goal. So, if I'm running across the net and I can't get a shot off, I'm not just trying to pull the ball out where I might lose the ball. I'm going to, try to sting a corner, BTB or something like that, and either hit a corner or, go over the net and then we get the ball back. So.
Yeah, that's wild. Do you ever get to the place where people that have seen you a lot, like ISL teams that you've seen for 2 years in a row, maybe 3 or 4 games total, a goalie, it's almost in their head that could be coming, the BTB. So they're kind of not sure what to defend, or they might overcommit to not getting caught on your highlight reel, so then they miss the regular shot. Or do you think people haven't really caught on to what you're doing, at least in making defensive adjustments?
Yeah, well, certain kids I've played a lot definitely know, a lot of the stuff that I like to do. So, but there's when you're throwing a lot, this is also, a reason why I like to do all this different kind of stuff, is because if you don't know what to expect, how are you going to defend it, really? I know I've talked to goalies who I play with who are like, I'm trying new things all the time, and you can't really, if I like to shoot like normally all the time, you're gonna get pretty good at that. But if I'm mixing in all this other stuff, it's like it's a little overwhelming, is what I've heard from some people before. But because you're worrying about a lot of different things at once. So I think it's really, really good for your game to be able to do stuff from a bunch of different angles. So, but I think it also has its place in the game too, because, like I was saying, you don't win a game being the one person on a team who's kind of carrying the squad. There's 6 people on offense, so you can't really force things. You know what I mean? You gotta let the game come to you. It's something Coach Rowley tried to teach me when I was a freshman and sophomore, and I think it really instilled itself in me, in the past year.
Let the game come to you. That's very interesting. When you were talking to the Princeton coaches, did they had seen you play and seen your style, and just in discussion, you knew that they would be positive going forward, but was that part of what you think attracted them to you, as they saw this kid has some of this innovative stuff and he's playing the game a special way?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I know for a fact there were specific coaches who didn't want me for reasons like that. But I think they definitely. I think it's definitely pretty attractive to know that you know, if you're recruiting a kid who has a large repertoire of things that they can do, I think that's pretty attractive for sure.
Yeah, that's really it. It's like you said, you have to fail a little. Sometimes if you're pushing the envelope, if you're doing something different, you're also gonna have to accept, yeah, some people are just, that's gonna cut it off for them. And that's
Yeah,
also not, not to knock anyone, but at least for you, like what in a broad sense, anyone that's doing something new, if your opportunity comes along and it's someone that doesn't want to work with that, it's not meant to work out. Like it's not going to work out ultimately.
yeah, definitely. Um, I feel like there's a lot of like it's mostly like old school coaches really who are like, you know, we're running this offense and you can't step out of line. Really, like you're doing what I tell you to do. But I feel like most players don't want to be like a little like a pawn, pretty much. Most players want to be within the team. Most players want to be an individual. You know what I mean? An individual in a team and in a system that's gonna make them better, and that can help you make your teammates better, pretty much.
How would you describe the Princeton offense, the Princeton style, having watched it?
Um, Man, it's a tough question. Like,
Yeah.
obviously, I haven't played in it, so
Yeah. Right.
I'm
But
not a
even
hundred.
for someone like me that doesn't really know what they're even looking at when I watch like one of the games.
Yeah. I'd say like it's. I feel like almost like a little like stress free. I don't know if that really makes sense, but I feel like kids are. It's almost like they're in an offense, but they're not like being told that they can't. Like I was saying before, not being told that they can't do certain things. So they're running an offense with the freedom of also being an individual. Where if they see something and see an opportunity, they can try to make something happen off of that. But I mean, everyone loves like a nice fast-paced offense, movement, a lot of ball movement. I think it's pretty key for an offense.
Yeah, absolutely. I always like to ask this question to athletes in different sports. I feel like you'd be a good guy for lacrosse. And especially lacrosse in a sport where you look at the PLL, you look at high school versus college, there's a lot of different rules going on. If you had a magic wand and could change a rule or make a rule in lacrosse, what would you do to enhance the game?
Immediately shot clock. I know college and private schools play with the shot clock, and the PLL and stuff. But there's no shot clock in public schools, and I think it's a huge part of the game. This past year was the first year we played with it, and it completely changes.
Mm-hmm.
It changes the game for the better. It's a lot faster paced, and it allows for a lot more freedom within the game because ultimately it's like in basketball if the shot clock's running out, you're willing to settle for not as good shot at the very end of the shot clock as it would be in the beginning of the shot clock. So um, it gives a little blip in the game where you can almost try something new because if the shot clock's running down, coach isn't going to be pissed if you try to throw something crazy out of desperation to try to get a shot off in time. But I think it's incredibly important. I think it also just makes players better because you need to transition the ball, get into an offense, move the ball, and score all in a short amount of time. So it's just, I think it really pushes. It's really good for player development. I feel like.
Yeah. I agree with all that. And I also like the aspect of keeping tight games more competitive in the way that if you get up 2 goals and there's like 3 minutes left in the game and you have possession,
100%.
if you could just toss the ball around and just don't make a mistake, you can just kind of run out a competitive game. But forcing it so that, hey, score or they're going to get possession and they can make a comeback. It gives teams a chance,
Yeah, like it's like you have 60 seconds, to run out as much clock as you want, but they're getting the ball back unless you score. So
Yeah.
it's also a big reason why we did so well this season is because our defense was able to force shots in the early shot clock that weren't phenomenal, that either Tully could save or that, would miss the mark. So we had that was a big way that we got possessions, that we made possessions back from, losing them at the faceoff. Actually, was playing the shot clock really well.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Is it different between like PLL and college and like private schools? Is there a different amount of time? I'm assuming they have different shot clocks.
So we play NCAA rules. So we have the same as NCAA. But the PLL it's a shorter shot clock. I think so we have, once you get possession, it's 80 seconds. And then every time you hit the goalie or hit the pipe or something, it's a reset to 60 seconds. In the pros, I'm pretty sure instead of 80, right when you get the ball, I want to say it's like 62 or 63 or something like that. So it's a lot less time. And I think it makes it pretty interesting because it's a big up and down, faster paced game, which I feel like draws a lot of people into the sport.
Do you watch the PLL regularly?
I do. I'm a Cannons fan. I watch it every week.
Oh, you're the one.
What do you mean?
The one fan.
Come on.
No, because I've been asking, like, it's been exploding the sport of lacrosse, obviously. Yeah. And I think the PLL is doing a lot of innovative things. But then when I ask lacrosse kids, do you watch the PLL? They, oh yeah, like I've seen like a game or two, you know what I mean? But I wonder how much it's actually getting like regular fans. Like, do you see it? Am I missing out? Do you think a little bit? Are there more fans than I would estimate?
I mean, it's definitely not, every high school, college basketball player is an NBA fan, and every high school, college basketball, football player is an NFL fan. It's not quite like that yet. And I think a big reason is because they haven't gone to cities yet. So there's no real center for like a fan base. But I'm pretty sure that they're planning on moving to cities, like eventually, hopefully in the next few years. Which I think will be like, once it's like, the Boston Cannons, I feel like, people talking about like, oh yeah, like, I'm a Cannons fan. Yeah. Even if they don't watch every game, because kids say like,
or the Wellesley Cannons. Let's not pick a city yet.
I guess, man, but
I understand that though. You need a place, a home base if we're gonna, because don't they kind of just rotate around? Like, like, oh, this is the home team, but it's not really a home game with like, fan-wise, crowd-wise.
It's because they're trying to bring a lot more attention to the league by traveling all around the country. And then I think they, once they think that they have a big enough fan base, they're going to settle down into cities. But I guess we'll find out. But I do love watching the PLL, honestly, because it's very. I like watching lacrosse though, honestly.
Right. I think they're innovative. They're good with social media. They use. It's a 2-point line if you take a deeper shot?
It's like, I think it's 15. It's 15, 16 yards is a 2-pointer. It's like, we don't have any 2 points. It's almost like basketball a bit,
Yeah, right. You talked a little bit about developing more of a shot. Would you say that a lot of your goals and a lot of your action is coming in, dodging, rolling, making moves, and getting close to the net? Or do you think, is that something you're trying to add more, being more of a threat from outside at like a college level game?
it's obviously a lot harder to get to the net when you're playing college lacrosse. But I get to the net a lot. That's kind of how I score a lot of my goals. So I'm trying to, get better at shooting and stuff because, there's a lot of times where I come out of a dodge and I'm like, decently far away from the net. And I'm like, man, I really wish I could rip a shot right now. So that's pretty much why I've had too many moments like that. So that's really why I'm committing myself to shooting out of dodge and stuff like that.
How good would you say? Do you have like a dominant hand where have you kind of closed the gap very much, like with those BTBs and things like that? Can you go either way, or do you have a pretty dominant hand on that kind of newer stuff?
So, well, I am a lefty, so I everything's a lot more natural with my left-handed side. Just holding the stick like that is a lot more comfortable for me. But I mean, I work on my right hand a lot. I have a really good right hand, which people don't expect because it doesn't come out that much. But just because I'd prefer to have it in my left hand. But if I have to, my right hand's pretty good. I mean, I throw BTBs all the time in practice with my right hand. When I'm playing wall ball and stuff. But it hasn't really manifested itself into the game too much because I'd rather just like do something with my left hand. But if I need to, it's there.
If not lacrosse, what do you think your sport would be? What do you think you'd be best suited for?
That's a good question. I mean, I love so many sports, but I want to say basketball. I love basketball. I think it's such a fun sport. And I think a lot of it translates to lacrosse. So, basketball is really fun for me to play. I mean, I play I'm shooting around almost every day. I'm not awesome, but it's a lot of fun to do. I also love hockey. Hockey's really fun, even though I'm terrible at hockey, but it's fun. But I like how there's a lot of room for creativity, specifically in basketball. Because you really just, no matter how you get the ball into the hoop, do it. So I love coming off of picks and stuff. I love the pick game. I love it in lacrosse, so I love it in basketball because it's really similar. And I love feeding. I feel like basketball, there's a similar vision to lacrosse and basketball, so I feel like I'm a pretty good feeder.
Yeah.
And there's no better feeling than just absolutely draining three.
Yeah, and that's a familiar feeling to me. I got a chance to talk to you after the Boston Lax All-American game, and I remember you saying something like the MIA kids were coming out trying to prove something, and hopefully this shows this or that kind of thing. Was that when you got on the field with those guys? Did it kind of play out how you expected and feel like you expected to, or were there certain things that caught you by surprise?
Sorry for the dogs.
You're good.
For the most part, I feel like I feel like we, like our team, the ISL kids, handled it pretty well. I mean, they didn't really throw too much at us that we didn't expect. I mean, but I think there's I mean, I think this talent level is pretty similar, but I think honestly what makes like the reason why we would beat the MIA kids is because just like overall just like pace of play and playing like good team lacrosse. I feel like when you're playing in the MIA, it's a lot easier to get away with not playing as good lacrosse and still winning. So you can't really there's not many off weeks you can have in the ISL. There's a few teams that aren't very strong, but other than that, every team is capable of beating any team. But I do have a lot of respect for that MIA kids because that's definitely that's pretty good lacrosse. So
yeah, I think you make a good point there, but I'd also say probably those kids get in the style where they're used to having that be put on them. Some of those guys where they're coming from teams where, those like top 8 teams in the ISL across the board, you're going to have like filled in positions where like everyone's competent, can play, can do this or that. There's kids, if you watch even in like a semifinal game, there'll be teams they're very good teams with like a lot of many talented players, but some of the players are still like dropping passes or making just passes that.
I think there's a lot more.
So I'm just saying they kind of get used to, like, if you're on a team where sometimes those spots aren't filled in and you're a really good player, you kind of get used to, I think, having it be put on you. So if there's a difference in that style, it might be just week to week. That's how they have to play.
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely, there's a lot more on the shoulders of a lot of those MIA kids because, I can have an off game and there's plenty of people who can, do a good enough job where we're going to have a pretty good shot of winning a game. You know what I mean? But, for a lot of the MIA teams, there's like, they rely on a couple really good kids to pretty much carry their team, which is a lot of pressure, which I've been fortunate enough not to, I haven't had that as much because there's so many good players, on our team and stuff. And I have a lot of respect for kids who could carry their teams like that, because that's pretty hard to do. And I think that helps. I think that's a big part of, making a lot of those kids really good players is like, they have to do so much every game, so much more even than, than like I have to do every single game in order to win the game for their team. So there's definitely, you're definitely right with that. There's definitely, I feel like that environment definitely makes some really good players.
Would you ever want to? Oh, sorry. Would you ever want to coach lacrosse, do you think?
Yeah, I've coached a couple young teams before. I mean, I love the sport so much. Yeah, I'm totally something I'd consider doing, for like at a higher level. Yeah, I mean, it's just fun. I think anything about the sport's really, really fun. So I totally would consider coaching.
Absolutely. What do you think makes a good coach?
Well, I'll say Coach Rowley, I think, is maybe the best coach I've ever had because of what he does off the field for a lot of reasons. I mean, he helps a lot with recruiting and everything, obviously, but he's just a really great guy. He's someone that you want to be friends with and someone that I've looked up to since I was 7th grade at Nobles. Yeah, he's like a coach that players can aspire to be like and can look up to. I feel like it's really important. And he has such a good relationship with, everyone on the team. He's probably had, he has conversations, before and after practice with pretty much every single kid on the team. So I think it's really important to build relationships with the players and really be like a friend as well as a coach.
What's the biggest misconception about Chad Palumbo?
Well, I get a lot of shit for being private school kid named Chad, obviously.
Chad, Lacrosse, Princeton, yeah.
A lot. It's like, I don't know. I hope I don't fit into that, category as much as it sounds like I would. I don't know. I try my best to be a good person, and I think that's really what matters most. I think just looking after the things and people that you care for is something pretty important for every person. So I do try to do that a lot.
Yeah, no, that's pretty Ivy League lacrosse player named Chad. That's pretty funny. But I do have to say, I think you do an excellent job of that. And I've talked to you for a bit now, and I think you have a lot of humility and kindness. And from everyone I talked to preparing for this, that was kind of, everyone said Chad's a great guy. Chad's a great. So I don't think you fit that stereotype. I think you're a pretty good guy.
Yeah, I mean, it's on the outside, everyone has, initial judgments about people and like first impressions and stuff. But, once you get underneath, all the whatever stereotypes that you may have about someone, I think that everyone has, a lot to themselves that is pretty unique and different. So
it's very true. That I love that question. It's my favorite question to ask people. What's the biggest misconception about you? Because it kind of, it reveals that side of things, fosters conversation, but also a lot of times people, and it's usually not a stereotype like that. It's a stereotype like someone's personality or the way they carry themselves a certain way, and people make judgments or assumptions, and then they'll explain, well, hey, this is kind of why I'm like that. People think I'm like arrogant, but it's really because I'm just trying to be confident in like myself or the work I put in. So I think everyone can do a better job of just not judging people.
For sure. I mean, I 100% agree. I feel like there's, there's a lot more to people than you'd initially think. So I think it's important to get to know someone. It's virtually impossible not to judge someone because that's just in human nature, I feel like. But before you count someone out or something, I think it's pretty important to get to know them for sure.
Yeah. The bad news for you though is I think I've interviewed 20 Ivy League athletes that were like attending the schools, and you're not going to get a lot you're going to keep getting judged, I think, about like your intelligence and things like that from some really smart but judgmental kids.
I've already had my fair share of that, I guess, but I've heard it doesn't stop. So.
Yeah, that'll be a pain. But are you at all I mean, Nobles is such an amazing school. Maybe this isn't a factor, but still, like the reputation of a Princeton, the academic challenges there. Are you at all nervous? Like, hey, this gonna be some tough classes, gonna be some tough professors. How am I gonna handle this?
Yeah, I'm 100% nervous. Also because you're totally, out of your comfort zone. I'm going to be living somewhere I've never lived before with people I've never really spent a lot of time with before, which is a factor in it. But, I've heard a lot about freshman year at Princeton. Apparently it's pretty tough. So I'm definitely a little nervous, but, I'm a big live in the moment guy, so I'm not really worried about it right now. I'll cross that bridge when I come to it. This is what I was talking about before, building up self-discipline and accountability. So hopefully, I can, do as well as I can when the time comes.
Yeah. One guy that I think's really has lived at, and they have accomplished a lot of things in their life is Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I listened to his audiobook, which I think is like 23 hours long. And the reason I'm so psyched about just all the stuff he does is he's got this incredible story. He grew up in war-torn Austria right after World War II, came to America with just a gym bag, barely spoke any English, and then became the world champion in a sport that no one knew about. And he popularized it just through his sheer will of force and personality and dominance. And then he went and became a movie star, even though he had this like funny accent and no one said you could, how are you going to do this? You're just like a meathead. He gets to the top of that industry, making tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. And then he becomes the governor of the biggest state in the country. And then he gets reelected and he's just an actor. So he just keeps doing these things. And you're like, this guy just keeps pushing all his chips forward and saying, I'm going to do this. And his philosophy, like you said, I don't know how I'm going to sort it out, but I'm going to do it when I get there. His big philosophy in the book, I was like, what makes this guy driven? How does he do all this crazy stuff? He said, the way he lives his life is that he creates a grand vision of what he wants, a big vision for something. And then he doesn't immediately try to solve all the problems, do all the planning. He thinks that kind of paralyzes people. He says, this is my vision. This is a rough plan of how I'm going to get there. And while I'm in it, each obstacle that gets in my way, I'm going to solve it as I'm in it. I'm going to solve this problem when I'm there. So I think that's something that a trait a lot of successful people have is some people plan and some people don't so much. But if you have a grand vision of what you want to do and you're insanely motivated, a lot of those problems I think you can work out as you're there and not get stopped by indecision or needing every little detail to be perfect. Because like it's not going to be perfect. Like you said a bunch, you're going to fail, things are going to happen.
Yeah. And I think that you think of, someone like Arnold, he's pretty remarkable. But I think that, especially with like something like bodybuilding and stuff like that takes so much mental, almost discipline, like we've been talking about, where if, it's something where he can think like, if I can achieve my goals, in bodybuilding, who's to say I can't, do the same for being, an actor? Who's to say I can't do the same for being a politician, just like he's done? So, yeah, I mean, he definitely had, his grand vision must have been pretty astounding, but you just got to start chipping away at it little by little, and it builds up pretty quickly.
Yeah, he's wild. He was in there's compelled service for like whatever during that time in Austria. You had to serve like 2 or 4 years or whatever. So when he turned like 18, he was just getting onto the junior scene, winning bodybuilding competitions. And so he was compelled to serve, and he was in like the tank division or something. And he was like a year into his service. There was the junior European bodybuilding championship. The dude just like took a train, went. He actually wins the competition. It's a huge step for his career because he said, I couldn't miss it. And he comes back and they throw him in like military jail for 2 weeks because that's deserting. Like he left his post just for his own personal desires. And then he was like going to be in so much trouble. And then the commanding officers came around and they like saw, and they asked what happened. He's like, oh, I won this competition. And so then they were like, wait, that's pretty remarkable. And they made it like, they then started like parade him around and like show him as an example of like Austrian strength and all this. Yeah. So they got him out of prison and he ended up all right. Like he just did what he just, I don't know, a lot of balls, a lot of guts. That's how he lived.
For sure.
Yeah. Final question for you, Chad. Yeah. What's your advice to a kid listening, watching this, who says, I want to be like Chad Palumbo. I want to go Division I. I want to have, an exceptional high school career. What's your advice for someone to get to where you're at right now?
Probably something that's in my head all the time is, I constantly just kind of go in the back of my head anytime I'm doing something, is like, don't stop, keep moving forward. You know what I mean? No matter what hits you, no matter how big it is, it could be, cancer, it could be something tiny, it could be like, like a sprained ankle or something. Mm-hmm. Like, don't stop, keep moving forward. Everything you do, almost every single thing you do in your life should be pushing you, even if it's the tiniest bit, just pushing you towards your goal, towards a dream that you may have. So make conscious decisions to, constantly be moving forward towards your goals.
Well said. Chad, thanks so much for coming on the Young Shakespeare Podcast.
Thanks for having me. It was awesome.
Yeah. Thanks so much, dude. Pretty unreal conversation. It's great to have you on. Thanks for sharing your story. Thanks for talking to me about lacrosse and everything. Thanks so much to Chad for coming on. Thanks to the people for listening, watching, liking, and subscribing. And please tune in to the next episode of the Young Shakespeare Podcast.